Farzy, May 10th here. I'm wearing my Farwell for Hire t-shirt for our viewers on YouTube. Thanks for dropping it off. Why didn't you come say hi?
Well, I got there and it was a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Mother's Day, in fact. And the place looked a little closed up. And, I thought maybe Poper's gone to see Mama Pope. Maybe he's just having some quiet time because it wasn't too late in the afternoon. And I know sometimes after a Saturday night, you need a little time to recover. You might have been playing guilty on that Sunday. So I just thought, you know what? Drop dash.
Did the dog bark when you dropped it off?
Did not.
Did not. Okay. Because the dog barked at one point in the afternoon and woke me up from my nap on the couch. And I figured that may be when you dropped it off. But I'm glad you did because I wanted to wear it on the podcast. Go to Farwell for Hire, the number 4.com, and you can get your own t-shirt.
Thanks for doing that. I was going to wear one of my own today as well, because earlier on the day of this recording, I was already out before I did my talk show doing some Farwell for Hire work. And it was like hard work. So it was a sweaty mess. And I thought I should clean up a little bit before I go on radio and TV and do my show. And anyway, at one point I'll bust one out too. But yes, Farwell, the number 4hire.com. And I got to tell you, Poper, you've never looked better, pal.
Thank you. For the rest of the podcast during this month, I'm going to be wearing this shirt. So if anybody sees it and goes, oh, he's wearing that shirt again. Yes. And did I wash it in between? I don't know. That will depend.
Hey, but you can get one of your own if you're so inclined, right? You want to look as good as Chris Pope, farwellforhire.com/shop. It's pretty easy. Sometimes I even deliver.
How's your month going? You busy?
I'll tell you what, I am not cut out for this. I'm a broadcaster. Okay. You and I make no bones about the amount of effort that is required to do what we do. Yes, there are slightly different efforts required for different jobs, but as a friend of ours in this business likes to say, we ain't digging ditches. Well, I might as well be digging ditches because I could tell you some of the places that I've been already and some of the things that I've done and how sore my almost 50-year-old back is right now. But it's all for a good cause, so let's go.
I love it. Well, I'm sure you'll be busy the rest of the month. And if you're looking for an odd job, I'm sure I can find something around here to make a donation.
I'm sure you will.
How about that serpent draft in the OHL to figure out the lottery? We did the lottery to figure out who gets the top pick in this year's OHL priority selection. Did you watch it on YouTube?
I didn't watch it on YouTube, but I did watch, and I was going to say, how about the London Knights social media channels trolling the rest of the league with the pressed number 1 jersey as if they were going to get the first pick? We've mentioned this recently, but it's worth mentioning again. Give them all a raise. Whoever is managing these accounts while nothing is going on the ice, they're doing a great job. And I love seeing the teams go back and forth. And I love watching the London Knights Twitter troll the rest of the league and its fans. It's great.
Well, I think their mentions probably went through the roof once the draft started getting closer. And then they were like, holy cow, everybody just assumes that we're getting the first overall pick. This is hilarious. Let's just go with it. And it worked out really well for them. I was really happy for Roger Hunt because they got the second overall pick. And I think they really deserve it because I'm going to bring it up again. The Phil Tomasino trade, they got a rough deal about that. So they get at least the second overall pick.
Yeah. Tell that to James Boyd up in Ottawa, who also was loaded for bear when COVID shut down the OHL. And they had certainly made some investments too, but your point on that is well taken. And I couldn't help but have a chuckle because obviously our broadcast city is Kitchener. And I know Rangers fans are incredibly engaged in what's going on with the league. And I could just imagine them, popping their popcorn, getting ready for the YouTube broadcast of the OHL draft lottery. And they might have a cold drink beside them. And before the popcorn even cools, Rangers are picking 17th. Have fun with that one. Like it was almost for that in that sense, it was really anticlimactic.
It was very much so. It was like it just started and all of a sudden, well, there's where the Rangers are. So you're like, okay.
Less than 6 minutes. That's what it took from the time they started picking lottery numbers to the Rangers pick.
I was watching it and I see Kitchener pop up and I'm like, as much as I would like London to get the first overall pick, because I think it would be funny, please let them pick right before the Rangers. Right, and then of course the next one up is the London Knights, and I started howling. I'm like, Rangers fans are going to go to tizzy, like of course, right before them. And Lord knows that first round of London picks is going to be the stud player, and fans forever are going to be calling into your post-game show complaining about the ball dropping in London's favor. Although I want to point out, didn't get much pub and it hasn't really brought in that many, I guess, superstars or stars into the OHL. But the London Knights did get the first overall pick in the U18 draft.
Yes.
So I just wanted to point out that they just might have just got the balls wrong, flipped them.
Isn't the isn't the U18 draft kind of the Jonathan Yancey rule? After the Rangers went out and plucked him off the waiver wire, and all of a sudden, a year or so later, there was this conversation about maybe we should, these guys that got overlooked, we should give them another chance in some sort of draft so that some teams don't have any sort of advantage over other teams in bringing in these quote unquote free agents.
I understand why. I just think it's silly. Because so what, you want this draft to take place because you can't bring people to your team. Your scouts aren't doing a good enough job following these play. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, regardless, it was fun to watch, and I like that the league did it.
Yeah, I think it was too. It was a great way to get people talking about the league in the absence of any other reason to talk about it, obviously with the canceled season and whatnot. And how about the Sudbury Wolves turning into the Edmonton Oilers of the Ontario Hockey League, third first overall pick in 7 years, beginning back in 2015 with David Levin, followed, of course, by Quinton Byfield, and then whoever gets picked with the first pick this time around.
So Wolves fans lose a first overall player in Byfield. He's done. And now they get another one right away. What are the chances, right? Now just switch up your jersey, and now you got another first overall pick to watch for the next 3 or 4 years.
What do you mean switch up your jersey?
Well, let's say this first overall pick's last name's Farwell. Well, you switch out the Byfield jersey for the Farwell jersey.
I got
and you still have your first overall pick on your back. I think it'll be good. I think it'll be great for that city. Get a new rink in there. You got your first overall pick. Bingo, bango, bongo. Rocco Tulio. Rocco, remember his name? Dario. Yeah. Anyway, Rocco Tulio's in Oshawa, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Who got second overall pick. But
there you go.
Yeah, I think it'll be great for Sudbury.
I thought you were dissing on their uniform for a second there. I love the Wolves.
Love their jerseys.
Yeah. Peterborough's still the best in the league, by the way. I hate to say it, but the maroon and white it's pretty and slick. The simplicity of that Pete's logo, absolutely love it.
That's fair.
Always have. Yeah.
Did you watch any of the under 18s?
You know what? Somebody asked me that the other day, and I must admit two things. First of all, once the OHL season was canceled, and we pretty much knew that was happening since January, I've really been paying less attention to junior hockey. And because the Leafs are having such a great year, my focus has been entirely on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I only kept up with the U18s through highlights and what I saw on social media, but 13 OHLers collecting that gold medal with Team Canada, including, of course, the Kitchener Rangers' own Francesco Pinelli. And apparently Shane Wright is still pretty good at hockey.
Very good, yes. Yeah. I think he set up a goals record for the tournament, and he missed like 3 games. Like, what? What would he have done? That's my question. Connor Bedard looks fantastic as an underager in the dub. He was on that team. He played fantastic. But there was that Russian kid. I can't remember his name. He led the tournament in points. He's the same age as Bedard. And it's going to be fun watching some of these young players come up through the ranks.
Yeah, it really is. And if anything, it just makes me miss the season that we didn't get to have even more. Because you talk about Shane Wright, who criminally we only get to see twice per season anyway. You and I were just chatting offline away from this podcast about the inability to watch Francesco Pinelli develop in his draft year. Of course, he was likely to be a first rounder to the National Hockey League, may still well be, but you didn't get to see that. And these players that we just, we may broadcast for the Kitchener Rangers, but we love the league and seeing the talent that's in it. Poper, it's going to be damn near 2 years. Well, let's call it 18 months by the time we're back. It was March the 11th of 2020 when you and I were last broadcasting a game. It's crazy to think about how much time has gone by.
Isn't it? I know. And I'm starting to go a little stir crazy over here. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm sick of this. Get me back in a rink,
Give me back anything other than walking the dog. Because really, until Farwell for Hire started, and I found an excuse to go out and do a few other things, which is basically other people's spring yard work that they don't want to do, which is fine. It raises money for my charity. But sure. Honestly, I'd go to work every day and I'd walk the dogs twice a day, and that's it. I want a change of scenery, please. I'll take Sudbury. I'll take North Bay. Let's go.
It sounds so weird, but like now with these new restrictions in our province of not being able to really do anything, you're just sitting at home like on Friday night. Kate gets home from work and she's like, "Well, what do you want to do tonight?" And I'm like, "This? Like, what else can we do?" Like even going to drive somewhere. Like, "Oh, hey, I thought maybe we could drive down to Niagara or Hamilton." What are you going to do when you're there? Nothing at all. Can't go shopping. Like I'm going to go down to Niagara and go into Walmart. It's driving me nuts.
And when you're a guy like me, you're going to be like, well, I'm going to need at least 2 washroom breaks on the way there. Where am I stopping? Come on. Like, what am I going to do? Pull in behind the Tim Hortons and, go on the parking lot and then use the drive-through. And anyway, it's a crazy time to be alive.
It honestly crossed my mind on Sunday to get up and drive to Windsor just for Antonino's pizza and then drive home because it was something to do and would waste 6.5 hours.
Listen, I would drive 3 hours for that pie. 100% I would.
I thought about it. I'm like, am I just about to drive 3 hours each way just because I'm bored and there's nothing else to do for pizza? I thought maybe just go for a walk, Chris. It might be healthier, instead of sitting and then eating an entire pizza to yourself. Go for a walk.
We just mentioned Shane Wright's name a moment ago at the U18s, and that makes me think of another, the most recent exceptional player prior to Shane Wright's arrival in the Ontario Hockey League, and that would be one Mr. Connor McDavid. I don't think we can allow this podcast to go on today without mentioning the 100 points in 52 games and how Connor McDavid is exactly where he belongs, and that is in the conversation among the very best players to ever play the game. This guy is I don't need to tell you this, but and I guess the reason I bring it up is because this is the Connor McDavid that we knew was Connor McDavid when we started watching him at 15 years of age.
Yeah, there's no I tweeted out after he got his 100th point that I still look back and in his draft year, I was playing fantasy sports with a bunch of guys and I just sold my team off. I had a pretty good team, sold the guys off, and I wanted to have no wins at all. I was tanking hard. And he's like, "Do you actually think like he's that good that you're willing just to tank your entire team?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And I still laugh about it today because yes, he is that good. Like he was that good in junior and he's that good now. And it seems like every year he just gets better. And that's the scary thing is that he's still like, I don't think he's in his prime right now. So he's still getting better. It's crazy.
I remember watching him also in that draft year and interviewing him towards the end of the season and talking about this being, the end of his 3 years in the OHL and thinking about what might be coming next. He's like, oh, hang on, I might still be back next year. I'm like, okay, Mr. McDavid, right? If like, come on. But with that's true to character. And when you heard any conversation with him leading up to the potential 100th point, he's like, listen, if I get there, I get there. When I get there, I get there. It's all about team. And I believe it. Like really, he wants to be the best. There's no question, but he's not doing it for like milestone numbers. He just wants to go out there and be the best player on the ice every time he's on the ice.
When we're talking about him, I was just thinking about this COVID life, and we're basically living a Connor McDavid life right now. He can't go anywhere. Imagine him living in Edmonton and trying to go to Walmart, trying to go like just pick up groceries. Good luck. Edmonton is crazy about the Oilers. And then like this once in a generational player comes into a store or tries to go out for dinner. That's not possible for him. I would love to just watch his life for a day. What do you do? Like he must have somebody that has to go get him groceries or has a personal chef that just cooks for him. Right? Like he can't go anywhere. Even walking his dog, I'm sure he gets stopped on the road. People going, "Oh my gosh." Remember that picture of him in the airport with the couple that was holding his arms and he looked so awkward? Like that's his life.
I was going to say, I think it's kind of funny that you think Connor McDavid buys his own groceries because I guarantee you that, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe he still does, but I seriously doubt you're going to have Connor McDavid walking around the Safeway or the IGA out there in Alberta buying his own groceries. A nice dinner at a good steakhouse, maybe, sure. Yeah. But buying his own groceries, I doubt it.
Imagine him trying to go to a movie. Like him and his girlfriend just want, do you want to go to a movie? Well, sure, but I have to call Cineplex, book out the entire building for our movie. I think that's what he would have to do.
He might.
Anyway, I was just thinking about that. This is basically his life. Stay inside, and he works out a little more than I do, as you can tell, but my double chin I've developed a little more. But
It goes to show how much the pandemic is getting to all of us. Eh? You're sitting there thinking about, if I were Connor McDavid, what would I be? Heck, I am Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid and I are like brothers right now.
I am essentially Connor McDavid. Can't you tell? Just look at me.
First thing I thought of when I looked at you, right? Poper. First thing I thought of.
Did you see his 100th point? It was quite good.
It was
a beautiful pass.
All I saw was the goal in the first 40 seconds. And I said, okay, tonight's the night. Yeah. And that was it. Yep. That's all I needed. I
wasn't watching the game. And then I saw on Twitter, my good friend Nick Alberga, who does some work for Sportsnet, he tweeted something about, 45 seconds in, he's at 97 or 97. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is happening tonight. Flick the game on. I want to see this.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And his good friend, Alex DeBrincat, just underneath him in the goal scoring category in the NHL.
So you've got Austin Matthews and then two former Erie Otters. What I love about DeBrincat, first and foremost, is that he's still doing it. Like it seemed like every time he did it, and that is score a whole bunch of goals, you thought it's some kind of fluke, even though he just consistently does it time and again. But my second favorite thing about DeBrincat is the story that former Erie Otters general manager Sherry Basson had told about first seeing DeBrincat, in Sioux, Michigan, in a snowstorm, not wearing any socks, not having boots, all this stuff. And when Sherry Basson was on this podcast, he told the story in the same way. So either he remembers all of his exaggerations or that's actually the way it happened. And I loved it.
I sent a tweet out saying somewhere Sherry Basson is smiling at that, McDavid and DeBrincat right beside each other in the goal scoring race. And I'm sure on the West Coast, Aaron Cooney's firing up a 90s obscure rap reference.
No question that he is. So Sherry Basson, when he came into the Ontario Hockey League, general manager of the Oshawa Generals, it's a former Oshawa General that joins us on the podcast this week. But more than that, it's the first player that joins the podcast by request of the OHL Stories fans. So thank you to Lowell, who sent in the email, farwellandpope@gmail.com, to request the guest for this week. He said, you got to get this guy on the podcast. And so we oblige. And boy, oh boy, we had a chat.
Great storyteller, great guy. I think we had a 20-minute conversation after the podcast was turned off.
I think so. Yeah.
Right? Just an all-around great dude. One part of one of the greatest power plays the league has ever seen in Oshawa. An OHL champion, went to the Memorial Cup. We'll get that full story from a guy who scored 132 points in this league and wasn't taken that year until the 12th round in the National Hockey League. He followed it up with a 150-point year for the Oshawa Generals. We get the scoop from Scott McCrory.
Well, Scott McCrory, as I look at the backdrop behind you here on our Zoom call, a home and away Oshawa Generals jersey being well represented. Chris and I have long said one of our favorite franchises in the Ontario Hockey League, and continues to do it well when it comes to honoring its past and really having, continued to honor that past as it goes along. When you played for this team in the 1980s, the mid 80s, did it occur to you then the kind of franchise that you were a part of?
No, I was a young boy growing up in Sudbury, Ontario. Fortunately for me, I was one of the first under 16 camps. It was the original under 16 camp, and I was coached by Paul Terrio. And I had a teammate on my team, Lee Giffen, who actually becomes my line mate my last year. And Giff became pretty close with Paul, so I would follow them. And when they came into Sudbury, I met the team at the hotel, and all these young guys with their head shaved. I'm like, okay, now I understand this is part of the Generals tradition, but the way that Paul and Sherry and Chad O'Brien Boyce took care of the guys is unbelievable. And I said, you know what, I want to be part of it. And they kept talking. We talked a little bit. Didn't even know they were going to draft me when it came draft day, but once my name was chosen by the Generals that day at the Herb Carnegie Hall, I was ecstatic.
For our listeners to this podcast, and maybe people who aren't watching on YouTube, I think I know the story behind the red Oshawa Generals jersey that's framed behind you. But what is the story of both jerseys you have in your office there?
Well, the red jersey actually is my jersey from my last year. Brian didn't give a lot of jerseys out, but mine, because of, I hate sounding pompous, I have a couple records in Oshawa, so my wife asked Brian to get it, and we got it for my 40th birthday, and she had it framed. And the one behind me is we've started a committee. There's a couple there's an alumni, a couple business people, and a couple staff that have. We have 11 people now working on all the Generals that ever guys that ever played for the Generals since 889. So I work for a company called Troy, and we had the jersey made up, and we're going to start auctioning them off. The 5 retired numbers are going to be auctioned off first, because we're going to have a suite at the Tribute Center to be used for special needs group like the hospital, cystic fibrosis, diabetes. It's not going to be for the alumni. It's going to have alumni memorabilia in the room, and there'll be an alumni there every night. But it's going to be used for the region and the city to help people raise money for good causes.
A bit of an aside here, but cystic fibrosis also very near and dear to my heart, Scott. How did you choose the charities that are going to benefit from this?
We haven't chosen them all. We just each committee members put up a name that they would like to have done. My father-in-law had cancer, so I like to give it to cancer. My dad died of cancer, so I like to give it to the cancer unity here at the hospital. We have another member that is a big diabetes person, so we're going to give that. There's the Rose of Durham. There's a varying amount. Ian McNeil, a former player, has another charity. So there's 11 members. Each member is going to be able to choose a charity, and then we're going to put it out to a vote where people can apply for it and say, okay, we like it. Most of us, Terry Johnson, who's our radio guy here in town, does the announcing. He's a big Grandview Kids. My wife works with special needs children, so it's kind of dear to my heart that we'll donate a couple suites to the Grandview Kids to help them raise money as well.
That's a great initiative. I like that. You mentioned earlier about growing up in Sudbury. How weird was it when you get drafted to the Generals that your good friend Kay Whitmore is on the Peterborough Petes?
I guess you know a little bit about that. Kay and I grew up together. We went from kindergarten to grade 10. Grade 10, he got drafted to the Petes. I went back to grade 11. I could have been on that team, but a lot of people don't know. My brother was the coach of that midget team, and he actually cut me during the training camp because my dad was president of Sudbury Minor at the time, and my brother was 6 years old, and goes, what are you going to do? What should I do, Dad? He goes, you do what's right for you, not what's right for yourself. He goes, you got to do what's good for yourself, not your brother. Sorry, should have rephrased that. But Kay and I remain good friends. We actually played together our first year of pro in Binghamton. We lived probably a kilometer away from each other, but a half a kilometer if you skate across the lake, because we lived on the lake. So when the lake froze, we'd play pond hockey from one end of the bay to the other bay. So Kay's a great friend of mine. You know what? It's a great experience growing up in Sudbury. We had 10 kids off our midget team drafted, and Kay would have been the 11th if he played that year with us.
Cut by your brother. How did that relationship go in the short time after?
It was kind of a love-hate relationship. Actually, the Big Nickel Hockey Tournament was started for me when I was 12 by my father. So a team backed out in that year. So our minor midget AAA team happened to play in it and had to play against my brother's team. So they had to beat us to get into the quarterfinals, and we beat them 5-3, and I had 3 goals. So every time I went by the bench, I just kind of chuckled at my brother. He wasn't happy. My brother's probably one of my best friends. He was a tough guy, so I had to watch what I said because I might get the snot beat out of me when I got home. So I had to be careful.
Growing up in Sudbury, though, it wasn't all hockey. I heard you were a pretty good baseball and lacrosse player as well.
Yeah, I played a little bit of lacrosse. After my first year in Oshawa, I wanted to go out for the Warriors, but Coach Terrio and Basson both said you're going home to get back in shape. But I didn't tell them when I went back to Sudbury. I actually played senior A ball as an 18-year-old. So I pitched, caught, and played third base on one of the Sudbury teams. There was two. Couldn't make the Shamrocks. So they were the boys team, but Kay and I actually played on Maslack, the secondary team in Sudbury. So it was kind of fun that way.
That's the second time Sherry Basson's name has come up already, and he was a recent guest on this podcast, Scott. I think actually we hung up on him, but he's still talking, and we're going to just pick up where he left off. What was he like as a coach and manager?
He was our GM, and Bass is a character. He had passion for the game. I bet you if you talk to anybody that ever played for him, you can give him his mannerisms. You didn't have to be a rocket scientist. Or these quotes that he still uses. Actually, in early November, a former general, Norman Schmidt, had some surgery done at St. Mike's Hospital. So I was picking up Norman, bringing him back, and Bass was hobbling along. He's got some bad hips, so pulled over, and sure enough, Norman and I are in a car, and he starts telling his stories. He's using the same mannerisms and same quotations. And Norman looks at me and goes, "Hasn't changed." I go, "He never will. God bless him," and that's why we love him.
Do you do a Sherry Basson impression?
I can't do it. The one he does would be rated R in these times.
What are some of those quotes that he was famous for? Some of his sayings that Bass would always use.
Well, like I said, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to know if you don't work hard and play hard, you're gonna win. So he'd always slap his hands like this. Gotta be a rocket scientist. We'd sit there and we'd just wait for it to, like during the Memorial Cup or Super Series, we would wait for quotes like that just to get us fired up. He'd come in and fire us up after coach did, so it was good.
Let's go back to that last year in the O that you rather humbly glossed over a moment ago. Yeah, held a couple of records there with the Gens. That year you were the OHL scoring champion too, and of course Oshawa got to play host to the Memorial Cup. Can you take us into that year, Scott, and what it's like knowing you're going to be there, obviously, at the end as the host, but the season 101 points that you guys put together?
Yeah, it started off the year we went into training camp, and Coach Paul had called me and said, "I'm going to put you, Derek King, and Lee Giffen together." And we're in training camp. We just played one exhibition game because Derek was the first rounder of the Islanders, Giff was the second rounder of Pittsburgh. And I was drafted by Washington, not until the 12th round. So we went to camp, came back, and I was the only one that came back out of the three because Giff was still at Pittsburgh. Derek was still in the island. So we played the first three games. I didn't have them. And it was, for me, it was different because the year before I had Craig Morrison and Gary McColgan, and we clicked off. And I'm a type of guy that when you get accustomed to playing with a certain group of guys, you feel comfortable. Then Giff came back, things started picking up. Our team started, you could just tell in our dressing room, guys were getting better. Then Kinger came back. He showed us his first signing bonus contract at the back of the bus, and everybody got riled up. And then the biggest part for us was Petri Matikainen finally came back from Buffalo. A couple of guys drove across because Buffalo was supposedly, Bassett told us that they were going to think about putting him in Rochester because being a Finnish kid, they didn't think there was any rules. So Jimmy Pack and I think Gordon Murphy drove to the border, picked him up, and brought him back. And so as soon as we got Petri back, our power play took off, and it just from there on, it was just momentum for us. Christmas time, World Juniors, none of us got selected to go to the World Juniors. So that kind of put a burr in Giff, Kinger on my side. Fortunately for me, my roommate, Mark Danielle, did get an invite to camp. So we were playing North Bay, and we beat North Bay. And it's kind of I made a quote earlier. I said I chirped my brother when I went by the bench, and all three of us kind of chirped Bert as we went by the bench, saying, "Thanks for not taking us. Good luck in Czechoslovakia." And that was about it.
There's so much to unpack right there. That was amazing.
Who chirps Bert Templeton? What?
Yeah, why don't you answer that?
Everybody chirped Bert because Bert was a great coach, but he had a demeanor about him. He just looked snarly looking, and he was always some snarly. He made some comments on the bench. In the days when coaches could chirp a player or two, he would make a quote, and it was really nice for us when we beat them to host the Memorial Cup, and then when we won the OHL championship, both gave me a little chirp. And then at the Memorial Cup, I had to go in for a Player of the Year meeting, and Larry Maverty, who I loved, Matt was there with Bert, and Bert goes, "Scott, I just want to apologize. Thanks. You're a great hockey player. Thanks for chirping me back. You kind of put me in my place." I said, "You know what? It's part of the game. It's emotions. People don't understand it sometimes in the game. You get a little heated. You say things, and it's not to be facetious or be vicious. It's just part of the game."
You mentioned that power play. It is still one of the best power plays this league has ever seen. What made it so successful?
What made it successful was that nobody was greedy. Everybody knew the role, and Paul had created 14 options off it. And people still ask me, "So what was your power play like?" I said, it was an overload that went into a 1-3-1. We were actually the original 1-3-1 because Paul had coached in Germany, and he was so far ahead of his game. We did X's and O's like before anybody even thought about it. And we spent 30 minutes every day practicing it. And we had one day was an hour, he put tires out and said, "Okay, move around." Petrie was so dynamic in how he could get the puck. Lee was a great disher, banger. Gordon Murphy could see the ice so well as well. So when Petrie fed it across to him, there was options to go across to all of us. And Derek just had such quick release, and they got me the puck, and I would try to get it to one of them score. And if occasionally somebody took that option away, I would sneak it between the goalie's legs.
14 options on a power play is insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and well, we're doing a HP1, and Jody Hall was teaching power play. He goes, "Scott, why don't you come up here and run?" And I go, "I can't tell you all the secrets, Jody, because you never know. I might coach against you one day." So,
Well, I wondered about that because 14 options is bonkers. And then I wondered, even as Chris was asking the question, how much it has to do with personnel and how much it has to do. And I think this might be the age old question in sports or just in hockey, how much was Coach Terrio's systems that helped you do that with all those options, and how much was it the guys on the ice that were able to execute?
it's a combination of both. The skill level was exceptional. Like, I don't know if you guys remember Petrie. Petrie was one of the first Europeans in our league. He had such skating and stick handling ability. Like I said, Gord had a great shot, played, 15 years in the NHL. Derek, first rounder. Giff, so skilled as well. But it was just, he made us work every option. We weren't stuck in just Petrie to Lee to Scott to Derek or to Gord coming back door. It was, you had to work every option all the time, and it just became, okay, that's not there, here you go. But he was how would I put it? He was a perfectionist. That you got to work it, and then he'd go, okay. Ian Young was our goalie coach. Bring the goalies out. Let's work on it, and it worked. I believe we're still 1 or 2 ever in the OHL percentage. My last year, I think we were around 33.5%. So.
Also crazy,
Sorry,
just for the record.
That's insane.
That's London Knights territory almost, eh?
I think somebody said that we were better than that team with Corey Perry in them.
That's crazy.
But I don't know if they kept stats, but we kept stats because, like I said, Paul was so far ahead. We had stats on our wall. We had goals. If we had so many points in the 10-game segment, power play was this, goals against, goals for. It took it like we had Jeff Hackett as a rookie goalie with Sean Evoy as an overage goalie, and they were fighting each other internally to make sure they didn't lose the net. And they didn't want to feel bad if we gave up 3 goals in a game because they knew there was a bonus on the line for us. Like it was a dinner, but it was still, guys, we did everything together. We were such a good group of guys. Like talking about the jersey, I sent a text message to a couple guys, and they fired off the other guys. Oh yeah, Scoop, I want 2 of my jerseys. I'm like, okay, good, no problem. That's just the way it was in Oshawa. The way it continues to be is it's a family. you hear people talking about once a general, always a general, or that is truly here in Oshawa. We're all family. Like if I go in to see Brian, Roger will say, "Hey Scott, how's it going?" It's just continued.
You mentioned Scoop. Where'd that nickname come from?
It came from my first year. We had a player named Chris McCrory. Chris was a real tough guy. I played a little bit with Toronto. We had one of our players. Well, one of my the guy who drove me around my first year, Ian Ferguson. His brother was in a car accident, and he wasn't coming. So guys are like, "Where's Fergie?" And I said, "Guys, Ferg's brother was in a car accident. He's not coming." And after that, my mother got me hooked on the hockey news when I was 14 years old. So the hockey news would come to my house, and I would read the stats on every team we play, every player we played against, and guys were like, "Scoop, who's got the most points on Kingston?" "Well, it's Vukovic." Okay. So they just started. Chris Cougar just started calling me Scoop.
That 87 Memorial Cup, you guys go through the round robin perfect at 3-0, and then ultimately lose that final to Medicine Hat. Looking back on it, Scott, did the layoff hurt a little bit, or was Medicine Hat just that good?
I think the layoff hurt us. They're a great team. No, not taken away. I played with Mark Peterson and Neil Brady in Kalamazoo. Those guys had talent, but we were better. But we were off those 4 days, and unfortunately for us, the day before we went to the zoo, and it was, I think with the humidity, it was 32 degrees, and some guys got zapped emotionally and energy-wise, and can't make excuses. They just outplayed us. Trevor Linden had a great day, but those are the things you wish you could have done differently. I think we probably would have been better to play 4 games and not have that 4 days off. I wasn't going to play game 4 anyways. I had badly broke my bursa in my left knee. So when I was done 3 days later in Washington, they drained my knee. So I was barely playing. And when I played on the final game, my knee was wrapped up pretty extensively. So I wouldn't have played, but I think it would have been better for the team that we would have played the 4th game against Medicine Hat, just to get it over with instead of having that time off and letting them play Laval or Longueuil twice.
It was a much different game back then, but the year before that, you had 132 points, but went in the 12th round of the NHL draft. Why do you think that was?
Because the Iron Curtain came down. Oh, no. I just think at that time you had to be 6'1" and about 198 pounds. Actually, 3 years ago, because I sell hockey equipment besides coaching, I was in San Antonio at the NHL Trainer Show, and David Poyle was the guest speaker, and David was walking around. He sees me, goes, "Scott, if you're 18 years old right now, I'd be signing to a multi-million-dollar, multi-year contract." I'm like, "Thanks, Dave. That would really be appreciated right now. I think my family would have appreciated that." But he goes, "You know what? That was just the times." Like, unfortunately for me, I got drafted by Washington. They were with Dale Hunter, Bobby Gould, Mike Carpenter, Mike Ridley. It was hard for me and Michael Belanca just came over from Czechoslovakia. My second year was the 6th centerman training camp, and Brian Murray goes, "Scott, we love you to stay. You've blown all the fitness testing away. You've done everything, but we're going to send you to Baltimore." It's the old saying, go down for 2 weeks conditioning, never come back. So,
having said that, the game did provide you an opportunity to some degree, certainly to see the world through your playing career. Do you have a favorite stop along the way?
My favorite city is Innsbruck, Austria. I tell people that I would wake up in the morning. I lived in the bottom of the women's Olympic downhill village. I get up in the morning and it'd be sunny in the mountains. You look in the valley, you see clouds, and you just drive through. And an hour later, the sun would open up, and you look at the Alps and go, "Yeah, I guess I could play hockey." It's not a bad living. My oldest son was born there, so it was quite the experience. I got some real good friends that I keep in contact. San Francisco is another beautiful city I played in. But getting to see the world and getting paid for free. My last year in Essen, Germany, we took all 5 of our kids to Euro Disney, so I didn't have to pay for a flight to Paris. I just drove with a couple other teammates and their families. We drove the 6 hours from Essen to Paris and went to Euro Disney, spent 3 days there and went back. So a great experience.
I want to get more into Europe in just a sec, but I want to go back to that Memorial Cup year because I want to put some blame on my co-host here. The general manager of Medicine Hat that year had the same last name as Farwell. So
it's no relation though. I'm not going to bring up Uncle Russ. Come on.
That year you mentioned it, Scoop, about, if I can call you Scoop, about the Super Series. Now, I'm sure we have some listeners in my age group. I was born in '86. What was the whole reason behind the Super Series thing?
Because there was no, how would I put it? There was no bidding to host the Memorial Cup. The winning team would automatically host it. But I think the CHL was trying to change things, and Mr. Branch, well, North Bay was so powerful in their division, we were powerful in our division with the Petes, and I can't remember who was actually Kitchener or North Bay were battling in the other side. So it was made a decision that whoever ended up first place in their respective conferences would play to host. Wouldn't get a bye like the number 2 team did, but would have to play against the number 1 on the other side to host the Memorial Cup, because there was so much. The hockey was starting to get into the more bigger business side. They didn't have the MasterCard or whatever they call it now, Memorial Cup. But the business side was starting to come into it, because I remember going to the Sheridan in Scarborough for meetings. I'm like, ooh, I thought we were just here to play hockey. This thing's more than just hockey. So.
It seems a little backwards looking back at it, where you take the 2 best teams in the best league, pin them off in the first round to see who's going to play or host the Memorial Cup. Kind of puts both those teams at a I don't know, and behind the 8 ball, if you will.
Well, and that was part of the thing. We were worn down so bad getting to after we got the Memorial Cup. It might have been even better if North Bay got into play in the Memorial Cup with us, because I think it would have been, they were tough. Wayne McPhee, they had some mean guys. Lenny Social, I don't know how many times he speared me in the private parts during the 14 games we played. Like Darren Turcotte and I are good friends, and Turk was like, Scoop, those were battles. I go, yeah, those were WWF battle royales. Like, people don't understand. We'd leave the rink with ice packs. I got slapped in the face by a girl leaving the rink on game 6 because I hit her boyfriend, supposedly. My sister chased her down the hall. She came up and asked me, "Are you Scott McCrory?" And I thought it was like she was wanting an autograph. She hauled off and slapped me in the face, and my sister just snapped, and she goes, "Oh my God." I go, "Yeah, that's just the competition." Like, it was crazy.
Let's stay on the Memorial Cup theme for a moment here, because we're talking about this 87 Cup, Oshawa hosting, and what it took to get there. But just a few years later, what many regard as the best Memorial Cup of all time. And I know you were busy with other things professionally in hockey, but you must have been keeping an eye on your form. Once a general, always a general. What are your memories of that cup?
Well, Ian Fraser and Brent Greaves were both first-year rookies. They were rookies on our team. Fraz and Greaves are great guys, and they got that experience. And Frankie J and Mr. Daniels were running the team at the time. I was playing in Rochester. We were actually in the Calder Cup finals against Springfield, and I called back to the office and wished Wayne and Frank the best luck, and tell Rick, "Hey, good luck with this. Make sure you don't go to the zoo the night before the final game. Make sure you guys," and I said, "make sure you remind Fraz and Greasy that you're lucky you're getting there the second time. Take advantage and get it done."
What did it mean? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to ask, to you, looking back at the success you had, that Memorial Cup run, the OHL championship, what did it mean to you to put on that Generals uniform? Because it is something special in Oshawa.
Well, it's the pride. When I first got here, I lived in Whitby, and you had to drive to the Civic, and the sign said "the city that motivates," because General Motors was the big plant in town, and you just took that pride, because when we won, even Game 6, the Super Series, Game 7, 2 hours before we got to the rink, like, kids are getting 3 hours before the rink now, 2 hours, and Mark Lignell and I would drive in, and there was a lineup of people waiting to cheer for us as we got to the rink at 5 o'clock for a 7:30 game. And then when we won the Super Series, like it was crazy trying to get out. My brother's team with the Oshawa Midgets was playing, or with the Sudbury Midgets was playing Oshawa Midgets in the Air Canada Cup Regionals, right to host. And my brother had his whole team there. I had to secure 40 extra tickets for Game 7. That was fun. And so it was crazy, like family in the dressing room, everybody hoopla on. My future in-laws, we had a party at their house after we won the Super Series, and I had to write an exam at U of T at 9 o'clock in the morning. I think I got to bed at 4 o'clock. So it was fun. Well, it was a lab too, and when I cut open the pig, the formaldehyde, I thought it was going to toss my food.
Oh,
it was part of the thing. Like Dean Martin, NHL referees, talking to my father-in-law, who's vice president of EDS, and he's a very strict gentleman, and he's like, Raymond, this is pretty good. And my father-in-law was like, you know what, Dean, it was good to watch you, but I got to go to bed because I got to talk to Ross Perot in a couple hours. And that was memories for me. Like we talked about the stuff at the rink, away from the rink was pretty special too. So,
Okay.
But then we have to play against Kingston the first round, and we come back and we played in Kingston. We lost the first 2 games of the series, and we pulled into the Civic Auditorium, and the tickets were going on sale the next morning at 8 o'clock for Memorial Cup. And there was, I don't know if you guys remember the old Civic, the whole upper bowl was full of people waiting to get their tickets at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And you're down 2 Cobb in the series already. So that shows you that, right? These fans they believe.
Oh yeah. And they're like, hey, don't worry. You're going to come back and win this. And we actually won the next 4 easily, but it was like, okay, guys, we got this. Look at these people are crazy. And my brother-in-law was in there. I go, what are you doing? He goes, getting tickets. I go, dum, I can get you tickets. You're basically part of the family. I said, I'll just buy your mom and dad an extra set of tickets. Don't worry about it. But my billet family's dad was there, and he's going, I need tickets. I go, Graham, you get 4 for Michael and Jeanette and Sandy. And I said, whatever we need, I'll just put it on the list. Like I had people calling from Sunday, can you get me tickets? Yeah, but you got to buy them. Like I can't buy one ticket here and there. I said, I got to know how many you need, because the next day we had to put our list in. I think I had 28 tickets. 18 were from Sudbury, so it was pretty funny.
One more question on the Memorial Cup, because it gets me thinking, especially when you talked about the way it was back in '87, what you had to go through and how there wasn't any formal bidding. And of course, we know how it works now. And we also know that just a few years ago, when Oshawa was in the bidding for the 100th and it went to Regina instead, there are a lot of things to complain about around the past 14 months in the world with COVID-19. But on the hockey side, how are you as an alumni feeling about the team that the Generals were going to be putting on the ice this year, and likely the Memorial Cup? At least they were one of the 2 teams in the running to host.
Yeah, I feel for the kids. That's the biggest biggest frustration of this. You look around, like I see you watch them playing. All the kids are playing. Having coached in Georgetown, we had kids. We got guys, buddies playing here and there. But I used to go and watch every Sunday, or whenever we weren't playing in Georgetown, I would go and watch the Generals. I'd be in the stands, standing with the scouts just to see them, like Philip Palmasino, Ty Tullio, all those. I feel sorry for those kids, because Roger and Wally and Niemer, they put a real good team together, and you could see that, you know what, they're on the brink playing the top teams. Like Peterborough come in and they played Peterborough really strong, and even Ottawa. And it's like, you know what, those kids not getting an opportunity to live that experience. Like people say, oh, you must feel bad you lost the World Cup. I got there. There's a lot of kids that play in the OHL or in the CHL, don't even get a sniff. But we got to the final game. Yeah, we lost, but it's an experience. It's something you never forget. Like Jeff Hackett says to me, goes, I wish I was better that day. I'm like, Hack, Trevor Linden was just so good that game. He got lucky and they got the bounces. It's a one game, and you never know what can happen in one game.
During that run, you guys had to play, we talked about it, North Bay in a 7-game series twice, and a 7-game series against Peterborough. Which of
Yeah.
those two teams in the 7-game series was harder on the team? Was it the Peterborough series or was it the North Bay series?
It was the North Bay because they were just, Bird had them so tenacious. Peterborough had Ty, they had Robbie Murray, Chris King. Kinger and I are good friends. I got a Charlie horse, and I think it was game 2. I couldn't play a couple of games, but we had guys like Fraser, Brian Hunt, all these young guys. They stepped up because that was part of our nomenclature in Oshawa, is that the depth. Like, nobody was arrogant to each other in that point. Like, we did everything together. Our rookie initiation, guys looked after each other. There was no BS. You had responsibility. Like I said, Jeff Hackett, my last year, was Mark Liddell, our responsibility rookie. We made sure he got home, take care of him. And my 2 oldest guys went to Western. They lived at his house. It's just the bond. But Peterborough, they had 3 or 4 guys could mean. North Bay, everybody played mean. It was just a war. Like, I still remember Shane Doyle in game 7, Chop and his cousin's Trapper taking a 5-minute major. Everyone goes, "Oh, we're in trouble." Well, he actually broke Reeder's hand. The Reeder couldn't catch the puck properly, and we ended up beating North Bay. I'm like, is he not your cousin? Doyle? He goes, "Yeah, but we're playing for it. I don't give a care if it's my cousin. I'll drink beers with him later sometime. I'm not worried about it." I'm like, "Okay, Donnie, no problem."
Okay, if North Bay was the tougher out that playoff run, but the team name has come up, we can't talk about the Oshawa Generals without talking about the arch nemesis. So what did that rivalry mean to you? What does the Oshawa Peterborough rivalry mean to you when you hear that, Scott?
When we played, that was, how would I put it? You circled those on the chart going, okay. For me, my first couple of years, I get a second bicep pad put on my arm because Bruce Schubaum and Larry Shaw and Kevin McDonald would just cross-check the crap out of me on the power play or anytime they could. It was just a battle. Like, people talk about fighting in hockey. People don't even know that. Well, some people know we had 3 brawls with the Peterborough Pizza my last year, but we actually had a 4th one. We had a brawl in the hallway at the MEM Center. If there was ever video of it, people would be like, "What do you mean?" I go, "Why do you think now the visiting team in Peterborough is across the hallway?" We brawled. Kinger, I think it was Kinger or Ty, hits Hackett, and they go by the bench and they wave their hands. "Come on, who's coming?" Both benches empty out. So here we go. There's a bench clearing brawl. I had a video sent to me standing with Craig Conroy because Peterborough was playing Oshawa and somebody hit the goalie. He goes, "Well, the old days that would have been a brawl." I said, "Yeah, like this." He goes, "Yeah, it was funny." I go, "The best part of Craig after this brawl was as we're leaving the rink, we're going down the hallway, and Terry Bouvert was his assistant coach, and him and Paul Terrell he was a big man. Like, he bench pressed 350 easily. He's an athletic man. So they're chirping each other, F this, F that. And Dean Morton, who I mentioned earlier, is a Peterborough boy. So Dean's brother smacks Terry Bouvert on the side of the head. So it's like a free-for-all. Guys are fighting in the hallway with their skates on the cement and get it all broken up. And Chetto goes to coach, "Who's starting?" He goes, "I don't even know who's in the penalty box. Just sharpen the first 6 guys and make sure Hackett's skates are ready to go." And finally it comes back out, "Yeah, these guys are in the penalty box, so don't worry about their skates. Sharpen everybody else's skates, get them ready so we can play." But it was the old days. And me, I was drafted by Washington, so 7 of those guys were in the Washington camp. So the OHL guys always hung around because the Western guys hung around, the Quebec guys all hung around. So I'm fighting against guys that in early September, I'm in camp, and all of July I was in Washington hanging out with them, working out. And they're like, "Hey, you want to fight?" I go, "No." I go, "Okay, I'll just hold on to you." I'm like, "Thank you." So it's a bonus sometimes, people are like, "No, I don't want to fight either." Good, I'm done. My hands are sore.
Those really were the olden days. Nowadays, I think players are, half the teams are meeting up in the Zamboni entrance after the game, or they're texting each other and calling each other. Those were the old days where it was legit hate.
Well, and you talked about Kay and I were best friends. Like,
yeah.
we'd had the one brawl. Actually, Kay just goes, Scoop, come here, just let's stay here. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'm not getting into it either. He goes, if somebody's getting beaten, you grab your guy, I'll grab my guy. I go, okay, no problem. But today the kids, like, it's a different world, but the kids don't understand. Like, I still remember Greg Vay hitting Petra Matakainen behind the bench, and Petra got cut for 28 stitches. That was after we brawled Thursday night. We played Sunday in Oshawa, and Greg hit Petra, and Petra cut the corner of the boards, and that was doily snap. So Shane's holding on to Luke Richardson, and everybody's holding off. They're fighting, and I can still see Shane looking at coach going, "Can I punch him?" No. And then somebody hit somebody else, and the coach goes, "Okay." And he hit Luke and knocked out his teeth. I'm like, oh, okay. That's those days are done, and they shouldn't be around. But those were part of the things, the memories. You go, oh, that's when the game was a little bit tougher. The kids, no, the game has changed, and I think it's changed in the right reason, and it's made hockey a little bit better. But I still would like to see kids be able to be more respectful to each other. Like, there's some kids taking liberties that shouldn't take liberties. So
I notice on your resume, Scott, there are a number of big name coaches. We've talked a lot about Paul Terrio, obviously from junior with Oshawa, but moving on from there, you see Terry Murray's name, you see Ken Hitchcock's name, Randy Carlisle was an assistant. Who had the biggest impact on you as a coach?
It was Paul. I've taken a lot from every gentleman that coached me. I had Larry Plow was my first pro coach. Larry was the president of the St. Louis Blues. Larry made a comment, "You be nice to the people you see on the way up, because they're the same people you're going to see on the way down." And I use that line with all my players. I said, "You might think you're good now, but respect everybody you're working with and you're going to play with, because you might need their help some other time." Terry Murray, we called him the grinner because Terry didn't smile a lot, but he created a lot of work ethic in Baltimore. We didn't have a great team. That was the year that Washington and Binghamton split and both went separate ways. Hartford put their players in Binghamton, Washington put it in Baltimore. So we were getting guys coming in every second week, because at that time they didn't have 50 guys under contract. So we were playing with 18 guys under contract. Baltimore was bringing guys in. But Terry kept saying, just keep working, guys. Doesn't matter if we're winning or losing, it's how hard you work. John Von Boxberg, Donnie Lever, and Rochester are really good. Hitch, how would I put? Hitch was probably the best mental strength coach ever had. Like, I use his philosophies where he had a leadership group of 6 to 8 guys that if he had to get something across in the room, or the room had to get something to him, it went through those 6 or 8 guys. Hitch was great. I don't know, we talked about it earlier, Mike. I had just come back from Europe, and so I was a little bit out of shape. So Claude Noel was the assistant coach. He goes, "Okay, McCrory, Torch, let's go. We're going in. We're going to start working out. We're going to get in shape here." And Torch was like, "Oh, here we go." So get around the corner. Claude and I get on a bike. Mike's got the treadmill, and in comes Hitch. And we're like, "What are you doing here?" "I'm dating a girl." Eventually becomes his wife. He goes, "I want to take her kids for a skate. I got to lose some weight. So do you guys." I'm like, "Oh, okay, here we go." But I got traded out of Kalamazoo to Houston, and Hitch didn't want to trade me, but NHL Dallas was sending players down, and he took me for lunch. He goes, "I don't want to do this, but," he goes, "Scott, you got to be moved for your career to be better, to keep playing, because if you stay here, I got to take out a lineup, and some 20-year-old's going to take your spot." So I always respected Hitch. I saw him in Philadelphia when I took Oshawa, a team down for a tournament. Hitch gave us a little tour. Randy Carlisle was probably, how would I put it, the most unique guy that played, that knew the game so well, but made jokes about it. So his message would come across in a joke. But when you pissed him off, when Kitty was pissed off because he would go a little bit brighter red, and a few different F-bombs. Growing up in Sudbury, I used to skate with Randy as a 14, 15-year-old. I skated with him, Ron Duguay, Ron Shutt, Mike Flynn, all those guys. They skate at the rink where my brothers work, so I got to jump on the ice. Randy was X's and O's because we had John Perron as our head coach, and I had John in the year before in San Fran. John was a great guy, but X's and O's weren't his forte, put it this way. I don't know. A couple guys made the comment they won the Stanley Cup because of Larry Robinson. I think those guys did a lot of the coaching. John was just the talker and the motivator, but the X's and O's were done by those guys, and that's what Kitty was for us. He was a great guy. Like we'd have team meals, and everybody would be leaving away, and there was a couple of us that were on the kind of on the plump size that were playing. We weren't fitness specimens like the kids are today. So we'd have a team meal in Chicago, and their last part of the meal was there was ice cream with chocolate, and there was caramel sauce, and I would always wait to see if he would leave because I liked to have my ice cream after my chicken parmesan pasta. And in Chicago, it was, hey, McCrory, Scoop, get out of here. I go, no. He goes, okay, go get us two. You get an ice cream for me and ice cream for me and you. I'm like, okay, Kitty, no problem. He goes, we got to make sure all the guys leave, then you can have your ice cream. I'm like, okay. But the next day, he'd be like, okay, get on the scale, weigh in. I'm like, yeah, come on, Kitty. No, you're overweight. You got to lose 5 pounds. I'm like, all right, here we go.
That sounds like me and Pope on the road. I'm always stealing an extra dessert.
Talking him into his suit jacket pockets.
Like I said, some of the meals on the road are pretty good. So.
You played in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty sweet spot to play.
It was unbelievable spot to play. I got traded out of Houston, which was another great spot. I was pretty not gonna lie to you. My wife and my 2 oldest sons had just flown in. My wife's a teacher, so she took a week off school to come in for Christmas holidays. And Pete Deneen calls me the next day and goes, Scott, I just traded to San Fran. I go, Pete, Beth and the kids just flew in. He goes, oh, I forgot all about that, but we got to move you. You're not playing great. I'm going, well, I'm not getting any ice time here. Like, really? He goes, I go, where'd you trade me? San Fran. I'm like, so I sat with my wife and I'm like, Mark Laniel and I played together in Oshawa. We were roommates in Houston. I'm like, I don't know, want to continue playing. And he goes, Scoop, go to San Fran and see what it's like. So I flew to San Fran and it was a great town. Almost landed in the fog, couldn't see the runway, got it raining for the first 3 days, but we were treated like an NHL team. The vice president of our team used to be with the Golden State Warriors. So Monday Night Football, the last Monday night game, San Fran was playing Minnesota on the sidelines. John Purvis was my winger. He scored 50 goals, so the start of our playoffs. Dodgers playing the Giants. John gets his throw opening pitch. They bring in the whole team on the bench. Like we had Jerry Rice worked out the same gym as us. Barry Bonds. It was unbelievable. I took my son to the Nutcracker. Got everything free. Took my wife to Phantom of the Opera because they thought we were NHL. Everything. I played Presidio Golf Course, Half Moon Bay. Like we didn't pay for anything in town. We made a phone call. The VP would make a call. Presidio, 8 guys. Hey, and Rod Langway was like, okay, let's go. We're going to Half Moon Bay. You make the call? Yeah. Round was $180 a round, and that was back in 1998. And we didn't pay a cent to play. All you had to do was leave 2 tickets for the golf pro the next game. And they wanted awesome. tickets against LA because that was a big rivalry. Like McGuire and Bonds, they were at their games. They come down the dressing room. Yeah, you guys kicked LA's ass. That's great. Well, okay, sounds good.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, Farwell, if I can just have one follow up there. You played with Rod Langway in San Francisco. What was it like walking into a room where Rod Langway's there?
Well, Rod, I haven't been with him in Washington. He was, how would I put it? He was a god. And like I said, tried to say to you earlier before we got cut off, Rod took all the first year guys, Dale Hunter, Mike Gardner, all the captains in Washington would bring all the first year rookie guys to their houses for barbecue during training camp. Washington used to bring us down 2 weeks at a time in the summertime to train at the University of Maryland. So like Dale, any of those guys that are around would bring the guys over for a barbecue dinner just to introduce them. And, just Rod didn't forget a name. Like he was the king of kings That's why he's in the Hall of Fame, because that's the type of guy, the teammate he was. He had respect for everybody and looked after them. So
There was a story you were telling us about being on the end of the bench.
yeah. So my second NHL game, exhibition game, we're playing Boston, and Ronnie Hogarth was refereeing, and Scotty Stevens, I think, tripped. I'm trying to think, it was actually Randy Burge from Boston. It was a Bird kind of gave it a little flop, and I was sitting on the end of the line. Rod was the defense. I was kind of the separation, and Brian Murray's foot came through, and he started yelling at Hoagie. Hoagie goes, "Hoagie, Jesus, kiss me first, or we're gonna bang me." I'm like, I was laughing, and Rod kicked me under. He goes, "Don't laugh, don't laugh." I'm just pulling my stick. Going, okay, good. So luckily I didn't laugh, because Brian could get nasty, but it was hilarious. Rod goes, "Yeah, you kept it together." He goes, "Never heard him talk like that." I go, "I never picked up on his list before. When he got pissed off, his list got really intensified." So hilarious.
We got to talk about some of the beautiful places like Innsbruck and San Fran. Not a bad place to play some hockey. I don't know what Kalamazoo was like as a city to play in, but I do hear that there was a Coke machine in the dressing room that may have caused some. I don't know what it did, but I know there's a story about the Coke machine in the dressing room.
I wasn't really there that long back. They had a machine like Kalamazoo. It's Kalamazoo. Well, God bless Kalamazoo right now, because they're making the Pfizer vaccine there, and hopefully everybody's going to get their shots. Kalamazoo, when I was there, was either snowing or raining. Great town, great fans. They love their hockey. It's an industrial town, not beating around the bush, but great people. There's a lot of good golf courses. But the Coke machine, they had different things. And Corky Osborne was our trainer. Jamie Healy, who's the assistant equipment manager with Columbus, was our equipment guy there. And I remember Hitch getting pissed off. He kicked it a few times, because Hitch could get riled up. But I don't know many stories. I wasn't, unfortunately for me, I was only there for 3 months, so I didn't get too many stories from that. Torch might have liked to indulge in the Coke machine, though.
No comment.
Where do you think I got the story from?
Exactly.
You said,
"Oh, okay, that's where I figured it came from." Mike.
yeah, ask Scoop about the Coke machine in the dressing room. Okay.
You mentioned Torquia. Do you have any good Torch stories?
Yeah, well, like I said, the time, like the bike Torch.
Yeah.
We had really good goaltending. We had Manny Fernandez and Mike there, and then about 3 weeks before I got traded, my old roommate in Rochester, Darcy Walker, got sent down from Dallas on a conditioning stint, and there was 3 goalies at the time, and Manny had a personality about him. Manny was like always serious. Torch was just a lovable guy, and Walk was at practice, and Walk goes, "Okay, let's go for lunch." And Torch is like, "Where are we going?" He goes, "You tell me where you want to go, Torch." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Torch, Walk's buying. Take advantage." He goes, "Okay, let's go to this place." I go, "Is Manny coming?" He goes, "No, he ain't gonna come. He's too grouchy."
I can't believe Torch questioned picking where to go eat.
Oh, no, but Darcy and Richard Mavichuk had both got sent down with Peter Zezel. So there was 3 of them sent down, and they were taking the guys for lunch. I'm like, "You're going, Torch?" He goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, pick a spot." He goes, "Oh, let's go to," I think it was a steak and seafood place. I said, "They're not going to care. They're making good money." And I said,
Yeah.
"Walk owes me a few meals. I used to drive him for a year to the rink." So I said, "He owes me a couple of things."
When did you decide or know, Scott, that you were going to get into coaching?
I think I knew probably when I was playing in Innsbruck, my 5th year of pro. I like my nickname Scoop. I always watched the stats, and I always listened to what the coaches said. Became a student of the game, and it really dawned on me when I had my lunch with Hitch. He goes, "You know what? You're gonna be a great coach. You'll be a really good coach because you study the game and you understand the game." He goes, "I can scream at you and you don't get frustrated. You take what I'm trying to say. I said, well, Paul Terrell kind of told us that. He goes, listen to my message. Don't worry about how I say it to you. Just get my message. And he goes, that's the way it is. And that's, for me, I just became a student of the game. I was just a good student in school, and I just thought, you know what, I'll come by and give back to the game. So for the first, after I retired, I coached my kids in hockey and lacrosse. And then when it was time for my youngest guys that they were out near the end, I thought, you know what, I own Whitby Fury Tier 2 team. I said, you know what, might as well start coaching it. So that's where I got back into it.
Before coaching, it was 14 years of pro. When you, many of them, excuse me, overseas. What were some of the craziest things you saw overseas? Obviously, it wasn't the KHL that it is now, and maybe not suitcases of money. But what were some of the things overseas that kind of caught you off guard, if you will?
Well, I'll tell you the story. My first pro game, I'm playing in Innsbruck, in Europe, real not exhibition game. We went to Milan, and we went out for warm up, and there was like 50 people in the stands. And in Milan, the Forum it was built after the Montreal Forum. They copied it to a T. And I'm looking around, and Kevin LaValle, who's playing for Milan, played with my brother, played in Calgary and St. Louis, and Kevin was a real good family friend, and I was the stick boy with my brother's teams all the way up. I'm like, hey, Beaver, is there any fans? He goes, oh yeah, this is your first game in Europe. I go, yeah. He goes, oh, talk to me after the game. I'll buy you a beer or two. So go in the room, like just 4 other Canadians on the team. I'm like, we're gonna play in front of 50 people. They're like, this is brutal. What do we? I'm like, okay, whatever. So go up the stairs to go on the rink, and the place is packed. There's flares, green flares, red flares, because they were the Devils. And I'm like, oh my God. So sitting on the bench halfway through the first period, and firecrackers going off. They let a kid, one of the young kids on our team, like we had 2 18-year-olds, that they took stats. They were in the Army. They're professional hockey players, but they're in the Army. So they had to sit on the bench with their blankets and take stats. They lit the kid's shirt on fire. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. But you talk about fanatics in soccer or football, fanatics in hockey are like crazy. My first year in Schwenningen in Germany, my mom and dad had come over to visit my wife and my kids, and it's 4:30 and the game's at 7:00, and I got the windows. It's a nice fall day, so we got the windows open in our apartment, and my dad's like, what's that music? I go, it's the rink. Oh, is there a concert on? I go, no, the fans are waiting for us to get to the rink. He goes, really? I said, yeah. You're going to take my car, drop me off, and come back and take Mom and Beth and the kids to the game. So it's 4:45, so I'm pulling in the rink, and the parking lot's full, and the bands, but our cars are covered in Wild Wings, and my name's on the car, everything. So it's like the parting of the Red Sea, and my dad's like, what's that about? Dad, they recognize our cars, and when you go out, they'll open up so we can go back to the apartment door. He goes, this is crazy. And he goes, after the game, he goes, they never stop screaming. And if you had an assist, they said 14 McCrory. I go, yeah, Dad, that's how they announce the goals here. They get into it. That's why it's so fun playing in Europe, because it's an experience. Like I took my 2 youngest guys, Oshawa minor Bantam team, AAA team, 8 years ago. We went over to did a tour. We started in Austria where I played, went to Italy, went to Switzerland, went to Germany, and we ended up at the game in Schwenningen. And they announced that I was in the stands, and people started shouting my names, and parents are like, are you like a god here? I go, no, it's because you play here that's you become known, and people are coming up to get autographs. They're like, well, I guess you were something special. I said, no, that's just their loyalty and their respect for guys that come over. And I spoke German, so I kind of got a little bit more because I would speak to them in German. Some guys go over to Europe and they stub their nose up to people and don't intertwine with the local community, where I got ingrained with them. So I had a kind of a really good following in Schwenningen too. So it was good.
When you watch the game today, Scott, maybe even you watch a power play that's not working or is working well or whatever, what do you like? Who do you like to watch?
Who do I like to watch? I like Toronto's power play. Um, I just wish they would move the puck a little bit quicker. Actually, I was quite surprised by Ottawa's power play the other night against Montreal. It kind of reminded me of our power play, and I think DJ's kind of stolen some stuff and making it work. But it looks good. How would I put it? St. Louis has a really good power play too. So does Vegas. Those teams that move the puck quickly and take advantage of defensemen or forwards getting out of position are really effective to watch. I'm not a big fan of the drop back. I kind of hate it because in Oshawa we had a power play breakout that defended against, because certain teams would put 4 guys across the line. So Paul had this power play breakout. Like, you can dump it, but everybody's, oh, analytics say you dump, you're not going to get the puck. Well, if you can't enter the blue line, what's the benefit of analytics? If you got 2 guys against 1, if you can't get the puck away from that one guy, then those 2 guys aren't working hard enough. That's my analogy. So, but I really like the Leafs power play. I just like to see them move a little bit quicker and use the back door a little bit more.
You mentioned, all the places you played over in Europe and going to the different countries and flares going off in an arena, which I still just blows my mind. Was there a place that sucked to go into an arena wise, and was it overseas or was it Windsor?
No, I love going to Windsor. That was usually point night. My last 2 years, there was good point nights. My first year in Windsor was a bit of a scary situation, but my last 2 years in Windsor, those were point nights.
What was the scary situation?
I took a slap shot in the face.
Oh.
But luckily it hit the side. We called them the Star Wars SK6000 helmets. It hit me flat on the side instead of on the edge. I was lucky. I bruised my cheek, but that was the first time I laid down to block a slap shot, and it was the last time I laid down to block a slap shot without a visor on. And so that was, but probably the worst rink to go to for me was Glens Falls, New York, and the Detroit Red Wings had their franchise there. It was hard. The fans were not nice. I had one game where I actually got 4 goals, but other than that, it was like playing the Peterborough Pizza or a Battle Royale. Them in the Hershey Park Arena. My first couple years in Hershey, it was intimidating. When you had big teams playing in a small rink, it was hard. Today, the game's changed. Those kids wouldn't get intimidated by guys like Kevin McCarthy or Mike Stothers or old teammate like John Stevens that on the back end. Philly had about 6 or 7 Jeff Chikrin on the back end, and Hershey that could crush guys. So
As
one rink in Germany at Krefeld, because you could smoke in the rink, so you come out after a warm up and there'd be a yellow cloud above the score clock because everybody was smoking. And so you leave the rink, your equipment would smell like Marlboro Lights for the next 2 days. You'd have to air them out when you got back to the rink.
Of course.
As a Sudbury boy, any nostalgia for the old arena up there, which hasn't changed since you were a kid for sure?
Well, I grew up, the Queen used to be in Section 8. My mom and dad sat just under there. And Kay Whitmore and I used to play mini stick hockey in the corner because how the rink was built, there was like a butt end and then the turn. So there was like a little lip that the goalie could play there and you could shoot. But the old wolf going across, that was nostalgia for me. So my last year we beat them, I think it was 8-1, and I only had to hear the wolf yell once, so it was good.
Being from Sudbury, was there any interaction with Eddie Shack?
Yeah, for me, when I started hockey, I played at Riverside Playground, which was right near the Armory, and Eddie's dad was the rink attendant. So he took care of the rink, and Eddie's dad would, I think it was 5 years old, playing, well, they call it tin bin hockey now, and it was minus 37 degrees out. So we were playing another playground, and after the game, Mr. Shack would have the hot chocolates there. And as soon as the parents take off your skates, and he'd be like, "Oh no, leave the skates off." He'd rub your feet, and here's your hot chocolate. So Mr. Shack and my dad became pretty good friends. So Eddie came home one summer, so I got to go to Mr. Shack's house and get an autograph by Eddie. So Eddie was the pop shop back then was huge in Sudbury. So Eddie was he was one of those guys you looked up to. Watching Channel 5 in Sudbury, you will watch the Leaf game and you wanted to see him go down the track like Eddie Shack. So
Lemon lime, that was my go-to at the pop shop.
Root beer for me.
Okay, all right. It's pop shop. Got a Pope's like, what's a pop shop?
Sorry, guys.
Forget about it. Yeah. Okay, this is usually the point of the podcast where I say we keep our guests to an hour, and we always get there pretty quick. But Popey says, "Wait, I got just one more."
Fair.
And
No rush, guys. I'm in lockdown, so I got time.
Well, just a couple weeks ago, we got to the hour point, but we had only asked Sherry Basson one question, so we had to extend it a little bit.
There's a shock.
Were you with Georgetown in 2004?
No.
Okay, good. So you didn't cut me.
you'd remember.
My brother.
Yeah. I think I went out for about 2 skates and they're like, "Yeah, get out of here, kid." You mentioned earlier when just leading up to the podcast about Vegas. Did you play in Vegas like in minor pro?
Yeah, with San Francisco and Houston and Kalamazoo, Vegas had a team called the Thunder in the Eye. Radek Bonk and those guys were there. So we used to fly in, and that was the days where you'd fly in on not private, but commercial airlines. So you always had to stay over. So you'd circle those dates. Yeah, we're going. That's it. I'll give you another story about Torch. We're playing in Kalamazoo, and I was a healthy scratch in Vegas, and there's 8 guys at a Progressive Caribbean stud poker table. Torch's roommate, Mark Lawrence, pulled the royal flush. So Torch was sitting right beside him. Torch was like sour as can be because Lava made $53,000 and everybody had to leave. And Hitch goes, "Scoop, you're not playing. You stay here. Make sure he doesn't spend that money and make sure he gets to his room before the game tonight." I said, "Yeah, okay, no problem."
Hey, Farwell, I do have one more though.
Okay.
Just to bring it right back to the General days. We've mentioned a guy's name numerous times throughout this podcast, and he's synonymous with the Generals for 40 plus years. Brian Boyce. What does he mean to that organization?
Cheto is the blood, the glue that keeps everything going. Doesn't matter if you played one game or if you're in a training camp or you spent 3, 4, 5. Some guys spent 5 years in Oshawa. Cheto's for me, it was like a big brother. The OHL All-Star game, Chet's was our trainer, so him and I have a little inside scoop on some stuff. But Chet's is for now. He's like a confidant for those kids. Hopefully they're still talking to him like we did, because there's some stuff that he would do for us that not too many people do. I have a great appreciation for Brian, because I know what he went through my first year when Bruce Melanson died in practice, and Brian was the last guy to see him, and it was pretty hard. And so Brian and I have kind of a different relationship on that standpoint. So he's seen everything, he's experienced everything. I actually gave him his alumni jersey a couple of weeks ago, and I could tell that Cheto wants to be involved in hockey, playing hockey again, because that's his love. I met his parents were great people. Chet's another guy. We've been to his house, and his parents were all involved. His sister's involved in the community. He's like an older brother to me. So,
Scott, we've been doing this podcast, the OHL Stories version of it, for a few months now, and yours is the first name submitted by a listener that says, "Track down Scott McCrory, get him on the podcast." So clearly, you left an impression over those 3 years with the Gens.
Lowell Williamson was the emailer.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Don't tell me he's your brother-in-law now or something. Come on, this was.
That's I appreciate that. No, it's, you know what, great times. Like people go, "Oh, you're in the OJHL and this and that." I'm like, listen, the OHL has a huge part of my life. I coach in the OJHL for kids that go to the OHL or go in the NCAA. I just want kids playing the game and playing as long as they can and get whatever they can out of it. Get that better people skills and better lifestyle, because you're disciplined. Having discipline to play hockey, especially the OHL or the OJHL, there's not a lot of people that can say they've done it, and it's hard. Like, I had a buddy go, man, it must be pretty hard to play pro. I said, people think it's all glamour and the OHL is all glamour and you get all the accolades, but there's a lot of discipline. Like, I graduated from high school, but I never went to my graduations, my grade 12 and 13, because we were in Kingston and Belleville. So I wasn't fortunate. Those things you didn't get to experience. Got to experience formals, but you give up a lot of things. Like guys are talking about all the dedication. Like, yeah, there is. Like, Shane Wright's going to do this. Well, Shane Wright has had to give up a lot of things to get to where he's at. Connor McDavid, same thing. Like, you don't think Wayne Gretzky and those guys gave up stuff? Well, they gave up a lot. Now they're getting rewarded, but there's a lot of guys that didn't get rewarded with big NHL contracts, but they got rewarded with better social skills and better personal skills. So that's what we're trying to do. And guys,
Now,
that giving back by doing what you're doing it's huge. That's for me. Like, people ask me, what do you think of COVID? I said, it sucks, because I think the mental state for these kids and for the staff, like, I can tell you, I'm going through withdrawals. I walk 10 to 12 kilometers a day now. People used to call me big chubby kid. Now the only reason I walk because I'm bored.
Hitch would be proud though.
Yeah, Hitch would, and you know what? The last time I saw Hitch, he looked like he put a little weight back on. And for Ken, hopefully everything's good, but he had a heart. Like, he could be a mean SOB in the way he brought things across, but he has the biggest heart. I don't know, Torch might have said the same thing. Him and Torch used to get at it, but it was because Hitch loved Torch and he wanted to see him get better. So,
Scott, it's been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your stories with us, and we'll have to watch for you at a Gens game coming up, especially as this alumni project you're working on comes together. We'd love to catch up in person when we're at the Tribute Communities Arena moving forward.
well, you never know what it'll be called in three years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I look forward to it. And I appreciate the time, guys, and keep doing what you're doing and stay safe. And hopefully everybody gets immunized here sooner than later, so we can get the kids back on the ice playing, because they need to, and we need the fans to start being able to get in the rinks, because I think people need that as well, that interaction.